As I mentioned in the start of the previous installment of this series, if you missed it, check it out here. The term masterpiece is thrown around the fragrance online space quite flippantly these days, albeit harmlessly. People usually use it to express genuine, deep admiration for a fragrance because it may smell like nothing else they've ever experienced and it perfectly suits their tastes. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, I'm going to save you some time and I would encourage you to check out the previous episode of this series, as I mentioned earlier, for a slightly more in-depth exploration of the term masterpiece and how it may apply to fragrances. But to sum it up in my little observation, a masterpiece fragrance is a fragrance crafted by a skilled and recognized perfumer. This is very crucial. The art should not be separate from its artist. And this fragrance's objective presence on the market has done one of the following things. It has inspired trends. So there are fragrances that now exist since its release that may not actually exist if it weren't for this fragrance. It stands out as a hallmark in its genre, even if it's not necessarily an originator of any kind. And this is usually determined by what people are actually saying about this fragrance. And finally, it remains as something unique and inimitable on the market today. There's nothing else quite like it, perhaps even after many years. Now, subjectively, that means if you're asking me, I would say that these fragrances also do not smell bound to their times of release, hence the term timeless. They are eternally modern. So with that, let's dive right into these 10 fragrances. As I just mentioned, if we're talking about masterpieces, we cannot talk about the art without talking about the artist. And just for fun, like I did in the previous episode, we're going to talk about these in chronological order. In 1961, technically speaking, this fragrance was introduced. I think it was redone in the early 2000s, maybe in the year 2000, kind of into the way it is today, but I think it holds the magic and the timeless quality that it had back in the 1960s. This is from Guerlain and this is called Vetiver, one of the originators of masculine leaning vetiver fragrances. This fragrance is vetiver in its most classic form. It is vetiver mixed with bright citrus, dry, lemony, bergamot, bright, and immediately a little bit grassy and green smelling. Maybe a tinge of slight smokiness from that vetiver, but not a whole lot here in the Guerlain. Now, this is the eau de toilette. It is quite light. I don't know if it's changed over the years. I would imagine maybe, but either way, it smells amazing. And there are many fragrances that would not exist if it were not for this fragrance. This is a true originator. Guerlain Vetiver. Up next here is a fragrance that I think many of you guys have tried, and maybe some of you haven't tried simply because you've heard so many people say so many negative things about it, which is a shame. Don't let the masses sway you from something that might interest you, especially something as timeless as this fragrance. This is from Creed and this is Millesime Imperiale. Now, why might people dissuade others from trying this? For one main reason, the performance. Many of you guys already know this, but I say get a fragrance for its scent. The performance is a subjective variable that you have no control over, so might as well not waste your energy trying to control it. But Millesime Imperiale, performance aside, is a beautiful fragrance. Came out in 1995. Perfumed by Pierre Bourdon, Millesime Imperiale is a classy, timeless, fresh, salty, musky, fruity fragrance. It's a summery fragrance that honestly carries, as I said, a lot of class to it. You can wear it day or night. It's a fresh fragrance that spans almost any occasion, which is really special. Now, this particular bottle I have is an older batch. I believe this is a 2013 batch. It's quite strong. It's quite dense. It's a little bit more powdery than I would say more modern versions are because of just how compact it is. It's also quite long lasting, but to be honest with you, I prefer my 2016 2016 batch, which might even still be a little stronger than current batches, but I don't know. I'm not out there on the counters spraying Millesime Imperiale these days, so I'm not sure. If you've tried some of the current batches from the gold bottles, which are stunning, then let us know what your experience is. But honestly, I don't prefer this. I like it. It's still Millesime Imperiale. If I need Millesime Imperiale to last me 8 hours, then I can spray this and it's fine. But I prefer the 2016. It's a little bit more transparent, a little bit more fresh. Nonetheless, if you haven't tried this because people are swaying you from doing so, put that aside, try it. Get a sample. That is pretty much the mantra of this video. 10 men's timeless fragrance masterpieces you need to try in 2024. You've got to try. Get a sample just so you know, expand your horizon, expand your understanding of perfumery from an olfactory perspective, also from a historic perspective. That doesn't guarantee you're going to like what you smell. I hope you do, but you might not. Get a sample. I'm going to have a link down below to get one, maybe with a little bit of a discount. In 2002, master perfumers Jacques Cavalier and Alberto Marias combined forces to create a very seminal fragrance, one of the first oud-based fragrances to be presented to the mainstream market. From the house of YSL, we have M7. I can't speak about the differences between this batch and the original M7 from the early 2000s. I'm sure there are differences. I've heard people complain about performance, but when have people not complained about performance? Nonetheless, lovely scent profile. I get a slightly bright opening with mandarin orange. It's sweet, it's a little bit juicy, but it's covered in amber and woods. There is a warm, sweet, ambery kind of resinous feel. There is a little bit of this slightly medicinal woodiness, not stinky or anything like that. Definitely more on the westernized side of oud. It's a really easy to understand, easy to wear oud. And although it is pretty rich with its resinous qualities, with its sweetness, at least this particular version of it, it is transparent. There's something light about it. There's something not overwhelming about it that makes it very gentlemanly, very easy to wear, especially for the evenings. When this thing catches a breeze, even if it's a little bit warm, it actually does beautifully. It does very well. It just smells dapper. It smells very put together, a little bit of an alluring quality to it, but overall fairly sophisticated. So you've got to try M7. I don't know how easy it is to find a decant of this stuff. I do think it is technically discontinued, although discounters will get bottles here and there. I got this bottle from FragranceBuy.ca, but I will link to whatever I can find down in the description. So make sure you check out YSL M7 and let me know and let everyone else know if you've already checked it out. 2007 from the house of Kilian. We have this fragrance, which remains to be, I think, my favorite from the house that I've personally tried. For whatever reason, it resonates with me. This is a 10 out of 10 fragrance for me, and that is based on the way it makes me feel, which I can't unfortunately explain to you. It activates my limbic brain. There's no language in the limbic brain, so I don't have words to describe it, but if you could be inside of my head, inside of my body, I think you would know. But you may feel the same way about this. This is Straight to Heaven, perfumed by Sidonie Lancesseur, who has done many wonderful fragrances that I own and love. But this is an OG from Kilian, 2007. Once again, a lot of people claim this to be a little bit weird, maybe a little bit one-dimensional. Say what you will, but don't let other people's experiences dictate your prospective experience. You can't know until you know, and it costs not that much to get a sample so that you know for yourself. But this is a boozy woody fragrance, very boozy. Lots of rum, like rum central, poured on top of cedar wood that's pretty dry and some damp earthy patchouli. So those three elements really stick out to the forefront that define this fragrance profile, and they kind of form one accord. It just smells like all of them together. A little bit of dried fruits and vanilla to bring a little bit more dimension to the scent, maybe some slightly more smooth sweetness, a little bit of this pruny quality to the booziness, but overall it's boozy. This is what you get from the house of Kilian. They like their booze. If you know why, then you know why. This has inspired other fragrances, namely a flanker to this because it did so well, and also a popular fragrance from Tiziana Terenzi called Ursa, which again, if you smelled this, you can know I don't know if Ursa would exist if it weren't for this. Just saying. That's Kilian, Straight to Heaven. In the same year, 2007, if we're going to talk about seminal niche fragrances, we have to talk about what many call a masterpiece, and I would agree. That's why it's in this video. Reflection Man from Amouage, perfumed by Lucas Suizac. I'm saying his name terribly. Lucas, if you see this, which you probably never will, I'm sorry. Reflection Man is beautiful. It is such an iconic masculine scent profile while on the surface not really seeming masculine at all. White, florals, powdery, creamy, slightly soft and round, and slightly sweet, fresh white florals. But there's something undeniably masculine and confident about the scent profile, especially if you dress it the way the scent personality presents itself. I see a well-dressed guy in a suit that fits with a nice collared shirt, tie not necessary, but can't go wrong with that. You're confident, you look people in the eye, you don't overspray because you don't need your fragrance to announce you. Reflection Man is a beautiful scent profile that will make an impact on people. I love Reflection Man more and more as time goes on. I think it is perfectly deserving of the term timeless masterpiece. Some people say it was inspired by Jean-Paul Gaultier Le Male. Cannot confirm or deny that. Does it smell like Le Male? Maybe a little bit. It's a little bit peripheral in terms of the elements that come together. There is a freshness. There is a soft, powdery, creamy, sweet vanilla-like quality. Le Male is mainly mint, lavender, and vanilla, but ultimately it's kind of a different animal. It's just more elegant, more put together. But don't get me wrong, Le Male I think is also perfectly timeless. I just don't have it anymore. This is Reflection Man from Amouage. 2009, we had 3 perfumers collaborate on this powerhouse of a fragrance that is still on the market today for a reason. Many would say it's not the same as it once was, but that is, hate to say it, the sob story for so many fragrances out there. And the way I see it, if you love the way it smells, then buy it and wear it. If it doesn't smell the way you want it to, then just move on. We make no changes by complaining, so we're wasting our energy by saying,
this is not the way it used to be. I wish it was the way it was before.
Change is the only constant and time is short. So you might as well just move on to stuff that you love rather than complaining about stuff you wish you still loved. Anyway, this is La Nuit de l'Homme from YSL, perfumed by Anfilippo. I'm gonna butcher this last name. Pierre Wargon.
Not sure.
And the inimitable Dominique Ropion. La Nuit de l'Homme. Now, I do have a vintage-ish bottle. This is a 2013 bottle, which I've had for a while. I love this fragrance because I have memories with it. It kind of harks back to the start of my fragrance journey. It was one of the first few fragrances I saw being hyped to death on YouTube. So naturally, I had to go try it. I went to eBay and found this bottle for $40. Whoever was selling it didn't know what they had. Granted, it was only about 3 years old at that time, and I'm never getting rid of this stuff. I love it, even though I don't wear it a ton, but it's this fresh, slightly cakey, sweet, fresh, spicy, cardamom-based fragrance. It just smells kind of sexy. It smells very nighttime, alluring, a little bit playful, but not overly boyish or juvenile, which I love about it. Anyone can wear this as long as you love it. That is La Nuit de l'Homme from Yves Saint Laurent. This next fragrance came out in 2010, just the following year. It changed the game, which is why it's here in this video. And I think many people would say that it is the reason why blue fragrances became a craze on the mass market. This is Bleu de Chanel from Chanel. I only have the Parfum version. I used to own all of them at one point or another. I had the EDT first. I got rid of that. I had the EDP. I got rid of that. Now I have the Parfum. The Parfum is my personal favorite. I don't need all 3, so I only have this one, but obviously it's tied to the line, to the collection of this fragrance, so I'm using it to represent this fragrance DNA. And yes, it is a quintessential modern, fresh, deep masculine fragrance that just spoke to so many people really quickly. It took off right away. It is Jacques Polge who gave us this DNA, and it's going nowhere. It's going to be here to stay. However, I will say that let's look at the facts. Chanel gave us Bleu de Chanel in 2010. At the time I'm filming this, it's 2024. Almost 15 years of just Bleu de Chanel as far as the mainstream male marketed fragrances go from Chanel. They've been milking this cow. This cow is tired. All we've gotten is flankers. Will we get more flankers? Probably, but I'm hoping for something different. It's been long enough, so Chanel, your move. But Bleu de Chanel, timeless masterpiece. 2011, Julian Rascanet for the House of Creed perfumed this masterpiece that has inspired other fragrances from other brands. Funnily enough, Julian himself was recruited to make fragrances that smell similar to this for other brands, and that is nothing new. That happens all the time. From Creed, we have Royal Oud. This came out a year after Aventus and maybe was a little bit overshadowed, but there's a reason why it's still here today. And this is such a unique unique, striking, iconic woody fragrance profile. Very woody. It's not very oody. It's mostly like cedar wood, dry, a little bit dusty, green, but also kind of sweet, spicy, and did I say dry? So dry. You gotta like dry woods, otherwise it's gonna smell to you like you're just shoving your face into the trunk of a tree. Some of you might enjoy that, but most of you probably wouldn't if you've never tried a fragrance like this. But once again, you gotta try it. Get yourself a decant. You may not love that decant at first spray, but you never know, maybe come back to it, you might love it. That was my experience. It took me some time to actually fall in love with this fragrance. Now it's a 10 out of 10 for me, again, based on the wearing experience I have. It just smells so classy. I love to wear it for mild evenings pretty much all year round because it is fairly light in its longevity and its overall presence. You can get away with it on any evening, even on the warmer ones. I think it'll do just fine. Just be prepared to smell like the most elegant dude in the room. That is Creed Royal Oud. 2012 from the house of Tom Ford. I wouldn't say it inspired a ton of other fragrances, at least nothing that I've personally tried. And technically there was a fragrance that came out a year prior that smells pretty similar to this, but I'm calling this the seminal fragrance for a reason. I'll explain that in a second. This is Noir Eau de Parfum. This inspired an Eau de Toilette, which I think was then discontinued. This also might be discontinued. But then we have the whole Noir Extreme line. We got Noir Anthracite, which was also unfortunately discontinued. But it is because of Noir that we've got this collection that will most likely continue to slowly unfold through time, giving us slightly new iterations. Now, the Extreme collection has almost nothing to do with this original. This is a strange scent. It's one that I hated when I first tried it. I also hated the fragrance I referenced earlier that came out a year prior for probably the same reasons, because they smell similar, and that is Prada Amber Pour Homme Intense, which I do have, which is also discontinued. This scent profile does not appear to be one that really lands with the general public because it's odd. This is for the individual who wants to stand out in a way that is different, doesn't scream, is just kind of head tilting in some ways. The reason why I'm saying this fragrance is a little bit more seminal is because of what's come after it. Now, even though this came a year after Amber Pour Homme Intense, it often takes years for a brand to design, create, test, and roll out a new fragrance. So the chances that Tom Ford did that in a year, pretty much impossible. I think it's a coincidence that these fragrances smell similar to one another. And Amber Pour Homme Intense was the flanker to the original beautiful Amber Pour Homme, which was also discontinued, and we've had nothing since in that collection. So Prada completely abandoned that collection while Tom Ford has continued to give us fragrances based on this name and this idea that remain to this day that still make them money. Good for them. Anyway, strange scent, foggy, slightly rosy, sweet, damp patchouli. It smells like a dark foggy night in a cemetery. Sounds weird, kind of is, but there's something very introspective about it. There's something very intriguing about it. And when worn in a way that just complements the presentation and personality of this scent, I would call that darker colors. I think it just works. Don't overspray it. I do no more than 3 to 4 sprays of this in the evening when it's not too warm. Something really special about it. But again, not guaranteeing you're gonna love it, but you gotta try it if possible. Once again, I'll link to what I can find down below. That is Tom Ford Noir Eau de Parfum. And finally, technically not the originator of this collection, it is several flankers into this collection, and I talked about its originator in the previous episode, but I think many people consider this its own thing. In some ways, it stands out as a masterpiece even apart from the collection it comes from. This is from Dior. We have Homme Parfum, released in 2014, perfumed by Francois Demachy. I know many people who love this and don't care for the original Dior Homme. As I said, for some people it stands out as its own thing. It is clearly tied to the DNA of the original. Without the original, this would not exist, but it has a character to it that just simply makes it a masterpiece of its own. It is a darker, more leathery, slightly more edgy, stronger, richer version of the original. Much heavier on the leather this time around, a little bit sweeter perhaps. Still has that powdery iris which really characterizes this scent profile. It's musky. It's just kind of a different personality compared to the original. I would wear this in different occasions. I tend to save this for the cooler months, fall and winter. I tend to save it for the evening, and I tend to save it when I'm more dressed up, whereas the original Dior Homme, I might dress it up in slightly smarter wear. I tend to save it for the daytime though. It just has a little bit of a lighter personality to it. I think it does fine in that way. This one, I'm waiting for the sun to go down. It's really special. It's highly sought after, timeless masterpiece. That is Dior Homme Parfum. All right, once again, if you have yet to try any of these fragrances, I encourage you to do so. You can check them out at the links in the description. I want to know what you think of them. If you've tried them, let me know down in the comments. Let's talk about it. And thank you so much for tuning in. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.